Hello everyone and welcome to another installment of PC Building Simulator. This time we're doing something a little different, where before we've done repairs and upgrades on people's existing machines, tonight we're going to build a machine from scratch to a customer's specifications. So let's get started. Here we have an email from a customer named Axemaster93 at ravagerslarp.com. And Axemaster writes, "Canst thou help?" The email reads, "Hail, as thou art no doubt aware, the release of Feudal Fantasy VIII recommended spec lies on the horizon. 'Tis anticipated to be a most exciting game with visceral recreation of martial warfare and the heart-rending tale of a peasantry struggling to break free of oppression. Truly ye looked upon a Game of the Year candidate. System requirements are as yet unknown for this little literary tour de force, but as the bow is drawn in anticipation, still I must prepare myself for this imminent release. I hereby commission thee in constructing for me a suitable rig. I will pay in gold or digital currency as thou prefer. Eagerly awaiting thy reply, Catherine Berton, Assistant Guildmaster of the Ravagers." Okay, well, I'm feeling honored. So, this Assistant Guildmaster is offering $1,200 for me to build a machine capable of running Feudal Fantasy VIII at minimum spec. Okay, that's worth a go. Now, before I start ordering parts, the first question is, how do I know what to order? How do I know what parts I need that will give this customer the necessary power to run this game? And the answers can be found in a couple of utilities that we have from the shop. The first one is this one right here called Will It Run? So if I activate this, I scroll down and select the game in question, in this case, Feudal Fantasy VIII. Now it lists information for minimum spec or recommended spec, but the customer specified minimum spec. Now, on the right-hand side, it shows me what I currently have in my work computer, but more importantly, it tells me on the left-hand side what I need. So let's look through it. We need 8 gigabytes of RAM. We need 3 gigabytes of video RAM. We need 40 gigabytes of storage. For a CPU, we need an Intel Core i7-6700. And then for a graphics card, we need an AMD Radeon R9 283G. Okay, now, technically, I could just go to the shop and order all of those things, plus a power supply, a cooler, and a case. But there is an important point here. In the run-up to this point in the game, I have been pulling out parts from people's computers and replacing them with upgraded ones. Now, some of these parts that I've pulled out, I've used for other people's upgrades or other people's repairs, but I can also use some of these leftover parts on this build. Now, I know from the notes that I've taken before, I have sitting in my inventory a certain video card that has a benchmark score of 2215. Now, let's look at something here. Let's bring up part ranking. Now, the AMD Radeon R9 283G has a score of 1472. Here it is. MSI Radeon R9 280 Gaming 3G has a score of 1472. But as I said, I have a more powerful card up here with a score of 2215. That's the MSI GeForce GTX 970 Gaming 100ME. So, because I have one of these cards, I don't have to buy it. Now, I also know that in my parts inventory, I have a leftover power supply, so I don't need to buy one of those. Okay, this is all very good information. So, it's time to start actually ordering parts. So let me close this out, and again, I've taken notes. Let's go shopping. Alright, so let's start with a processor. Now, we needed an i7-6700, so I'm going to do a search. Here we go, Intel Core i7-6700. It consumes a modest 65 watts, and it uses the Skylake socket. That's important to know because whatever motherboard we select needs to have a Skylake socket. So we have to mind that. So I'm going to add this to the cart. Now, motherboards. Clear my filter. Alright. I need something with a Skylake socket. Here we go, socket LGA 1151 Skylake. So we have three options. Really, we can get away with the least expensive so as to maximize our profit margin. So here's one Skylake socket, DDR4 memory, $100. Alright, now for memory. We need 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, probably the best thing to do is go by price ascending. Now, I could load up a bunch of 2 gigabyte sticks or a couple of 4s, but let's see, if I did 4 2 gigabyte sticks, that would be 4 times 20 or $80. We might be able to get away cheaper by just getting one single 8 gigabyte stick. Let's look. Well, let's see. Well, we're not saving that much money, but we can keep it easy just by getting a single 8. Let's narrow our search here. So here's a Sheen Titan XL 8 gigabyte stick. So we'll do that. Alright, moving along. Storage. Our notes indicated that we needed 40 gigabytes of storage. The smallest drive we have available here is 120 gigabyte for a modest $20. So let's add that to the list. Power supplies. We do not need a power supply because we already have a Sheen Power King 300 in inventory, so we'll skip that. Now for cases. We can go with a basic case here, the Cooler Master Master Box 5 in white for $80. So let's add this to the cart. Alright, now for cooling. Have to keep our processor from overheating. We have a couple of options. We can get a Mortoni Thermal 100 for $10. We might be able to do a little better here. Let's look at this. So we have a bunch of air coolers here. Let's sort by price ascending. Okay, we've done that. Well, we can get for $33 an Esports 1 Red. Okay, we could do that. Give a little more protection than the basic Mortoni cooler. So let's look at our list. Okay, we've got the CPU, we've got the motherboard, we've got the memory, we've got the hard drive, we've got the case, we've got the cooler, we already have a graphics card, we already have a power supply. Alright. And if we want to get started on this now, we want to go for same-day delivery. So that's pretty good. Alright, so a grand total of $763. That's not bad. So let's get this started. Let's buy it now. Your purchases have already arrived. Okay, very good. So let's get away from the computer and get started. Now before we start putting parts down, let's look at our whiteboard. Our whiteboard has a sticky note, and this is how we tag our workspace for the build. So I'm going to pick up this job, and it's labeled Build from Axemaster 93, and we assign the job to this workspace. Now let's go get our parts. Here are our parts. Here's our case. Let's take in the parts here. Got the processor, the motherboard, the RAM, the hard drive, the air cooler. Very good. So let's exit that. Here's our case. So we'll start by putting the case down. And let's start by opening the case up. Alright, so it's empty on the inside. We also need to remove this power supply mount so that we can mount the power supply. In fact, let's make that the first thing we do here. So we go to Install, go to Power Supplies, and sure enough, here we go. We have two Sheen Power King 300s. So we'll grab one of these, put it in place, and then tighten the screws. Now I could put the shroud back on, but that would interfere with our ability to mount the cables. We'll get back to that. Alright, next we should do the motherboard. That takes a little bit of work. So let's do motherboards. The Mortoni Z170. So first we have to put in the standoffs. These provide a little bit of separation between the motherboard and the case. That way we don't crack the motherboard tightening the screws directly to the case. Okay, next we're going to mount our CPU. Let's zoom in and get a good look at that. So there's the CPU right here. So we're going to open the shield. Now let's install that CPU. Here we go, Intel Core i7 6700. Very good. Now we close the CPU shield. Now let's zoom out. Actually, before we zoom out, we're going to apply thermal paste. So, Tools, Thermal Paste. To assist in heat transfer between the CPU and the cooler that we're about to put on top of it. And the act of smushing the cooler onto the CPU will spread that out into a nice circle. And I've seen videos of on YouTube of people demonstrating this, and the dot of paste is the preferred method. So that all said, let's go to cooling. Let's grab our Arctic Freezer 33 and let's put that on. There we go. Now before we forget, let's attach the air cooler to the motherboard so that's ready to go. Alright, so next let's install the memory. Here's our 8 gig. Let's zoom in a little bit. Open the memory clips here and here. And mount the memory. Let's give a good look, just like that. So there's our memory. Zoom out a little bit. Alright, next step. Let's go for that graphics card. Before we do that, we need to remove a couple of PCI covers like this. And this. Now, install graphics card. Alright. So here we have our graphics card. It has 4 gigabytes of video memory, which is more than the 3 that was listed by Will It Run. So let's install that. Okay, that's in place. Tighten the screws here and here. Good. Bit of a snug fit, but still doable. Now let's install the hard drive. So let's go over here, zoom in just a little bit. Open the drive bay lock, slide out the drive bay. See, there it is. Now let's mount the drive. So storage, Mortoni Easy Store 120. Put that in place. Close the drive bay, close the drive bay lock. So we've got the hard drive in place. Alright, so CPU check, memory check, graphics card check, hard drive check. Now to start cabling things up. So let's see, we have motherboard connection here. Connect the case fan. Here and here. There's a wire. Another connection here and down here to the power supply. There's another one. Alright. Another motherboard connection here to here. Now for connections to the graphics card. One here. And one here. Good. Now we've got a case fan here. Connect that to the motherboard like so. And we've got some connections in the back here. So for realism's sake, let's pull this side of the case off as well. So here are connections here, so cable here. Connect power supply here. Run a cable from the back of the hard drive here to the motherboard. Now you notice, right here, our objective here turned green. PC can play Feudal Fantasy 8 minimum spec. That's good. Alright, so as far as cable connections, we have the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor, and the power supply, but we have a few more parts to put on. So, first of all, we need our PSU shroud. Tighten the screws on that. Spin it around. Install our side panel. Here we go. Tighten the screws here. And here. And now install the other panel here. There we go. Alright, time to attach cables. Got the keyboard, the mouse, monitor, and the cable. Alright. But yet, the system still says that we're missing a cable. I wonder what we're missing. Probably missed something here. Aha! We have to connect our power button. So connect the power button on the case. There we go. Now the only problem it says is incomplete case. Alright, we can fix that easily enough. Put the side panel on. Now the next thing it says here is no operating system installed. Okay, we can take care of that. So what we do is we go to Tools and select USB drive. That will enable us to load the operating system on first boot. So that all said, let's power it up. Contact. Got fans spinning here and here. Installing drivers, marketing IDs, boot sector, booting. And it's alive. Here we are. Very good. Now, if we want to be thorough, we can do an add remove programs. We can load will it run for the customer. Restart. So let's find it. Feudal Fantasy 8, minimum spec. All indicators are green, so we know that this will run Feudal Fantasy 8 for the customer. So we're in good shape here. So it's now time to shut it down. And now let's grab this computer and prepare it to go out the door. Put it out the door. And now we open up our email program again and get paid. So we collect our $1,200. Okay. So that all said, let's take a moment and do the math. We were paid $1,200 for this build job. Price of parts and shipping was $763, leaving us a tidy profit of $437. Not bad at all. This pays for most of our rent for the month for this workspace. A very good job done. So there you have it. A build of a PC for a customer. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you next game.